So, hi, let me just hear from a couple of persons. I think let me hear from Gifts, then we'll just go around a bit. So, Gifts, how are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm very fine. Good afternoon, Sam.
Good afternoon. How was the week?
It was okay, sir.
All right, that's nice to know. So, let me hear from Dave. Dave, how are you doing? Dave, are you there? All right, I don't think maybe he's not available. All right, let me hear from Cyril. Cyril, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm okay. How was the week?
Doing well. Thank you.
All right, thanks. One more person. Let's hear from Gloria.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Gloria. How you doing?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Your week was wonderful.
Yes, I just.
All right, thanks. I think some persons are coming in, so I'm trying to just use time to wait for them. Let's say let me just say 3:03, we're going to start something. So let me just quickly hear from other persons. Let's hear from Onyi Amechi. How you doing? Are you there? All right, if you're not there, let's hear from Temitayo Ishola. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Elvis.
How was the week?
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, and yours?
It's okay. Thank you. It's okay. So how's learning been so far for us? We've covered, according to this week, our outline for the week, we can assume that we've covered most of everything we need to cover for HTML, including the structure, syntax, semantics, basically everything tags related. We've kind of covered everything. Although there's still some hidden things that's not hidden quite well, but certain things that we cannot touch because sincerely we can't cover the whole HTML. But we hope that as we go, we bring in one or two things and just add it to the course of our lectures so that we don't spend so much time doing HTML. We can actually do an HTML course of, let's just say, a month, but there's no point to just waste unnecessary time. You can always learn. Learning does not end. So by the lecture outline that we're going to have this week and next week is going to be centered around CSS. And like you all know, that's just an acronym for cascading style sheets. Let me just share my screen. So every other person that is coming will just join. I think we have a lot to cover today, so we can get to a very good point. Okay. So sorry about that. So just let me know if you can see my screen. I'm off the Meet, so I possibly won't know exactly who is talking, but just let me know if you can see my screen. Can anybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, so I'll
Yes,
just
sir, we can.
all right, thank you. So I'll just run through what we have for today. So I kind of combined this PowerPoint into 2 weeks in one because the 2 weeks we're looking at CSS, everything that CSS entails. So I'll just break it down quickly. Then hopefully we can cover it up. Hopefully, let's see how it goes. Let me not just assume. So this week we'll basically revolve around CSS and responsive design. We're looking at the styling and layout of a CSS. And I remember in our first class, I explained that a CSS is just like the fleshed part of a skeleton. The skeleton is the HTML part, like we just concluded last week. And the CSS right now we're doing is that we're trying to put flesh into the skeleton that we created last week. Then from there, we now need to take a look at dynamics, motions. That's when we talk about JavaScript. So before we talk about motions right now, we're looking at fleshing the skeleton, which is adding styles and colors to the HTML. So part of the fundamentals of CSS, we've learned about the CSS basics, how to style web pages, understanding the box model of how the HTML CSS environment works. Then applying styling to HTML pages. How do we apply styling? Do we do that internally? Do we do that externally? Or do we do that inline? So we need to know how to apply styles to pages. So part of the introduction of the CSS that we talk about is going to be talk about how to style web pages. Then the method, like I just explained, you can either apply our style inline, apply it internally, or apply it externally. I'll just give a little bit of snippets on these three methods quickly. Then we have some certain syntaxes in terms of selectors, properties, and values. Then some types, we have the elements, class, and ID selectors. These are the type of selectors that we have, two basic selectors. An element selector, a class selector, and an ID selector. I'll teach you based on those ones. Don't need to worry too much about it. Then the basic CSS properties I will talk about the colors, the fonts, and how to style certain text. We'll come to that as well. Then we have a couple of units in CSS ecosystem. The one primarily used is pixels and rem. I think I use m sometimes too, but not frequently. But pixels and rem are the two units, and percentage as well. I didn't include that yet. Those are the units that I use like very quite often. We'll touch base on that so as well. Then we're going to look at how to style backgrounds and images. Then look at box model, content, padding, border, margin. We'll come to that as well. Then on the CSS box model layout here, we're looking at how do we control our spacing and our layouts. That brings us down to padding like we've explained initially. So most of the things are just high level, trying to just give a brief of what we're looking at. Then another area we're talking about is positioning and flexbox. I don't know if anybody have maybe gone a little bit of ahead of the class to just understand what flexbox means and also positioning. But nevertheless, we'll come to that point. Then we're looking at display. How do we structure our elements? We have block elements, inline elements, and stuff like that. Then when it comes to positioning, we have static positioning, relative positioning, absolute, and fixed positioning. I'll quickly explain that as well. Then on responsive design basics, looking at the viewports, let's just leave it down for now. Then these are just the final step of the project. So I've given a brief deep dive on our week 3 and 4. This is our week 3 and 4. You can see it's not looking so much in terms of paper, but in terms of the work, it's might not be looking so much to as well. It depends on your perspectives. So just hope it's not looking so much and to be looking very fine. So if you are scared, but I don't think you should be scared, don't worry. So let me just go back to introduction to the CSS, then we'll pick it up from here. So let me go to my, currently on my screen here, let me go to my VS Code. Let me make it bigger, too big. Is it big enough or too big?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So I was in the last class when Emmanuel gave a brief rundown on a certain design that we were all trying to come about how to structure the design in terms of just having HTML tags to build it. It wasn't looking so fine yet because there was no CSS, anything at all on it. But just basically, let's just put this here, let's put this here, let's assume when we start signing it, it's going to look fine, that and that. So today's class, we are going to try as much as possible to build certain things. I'm not going to continue the design. I think possibly man will continue it for you, or you can continue it yourself. Because the idea of this class today is the fact that we're trying to explain those styles and break down components into how do we make an input fine? How do we make a button fine? Obviously, there are things that we're trying to do today. So the ideas of everything we are going to possibly learn in this class, you can take those ideas and complete the work that was started last week. That's if you can, but I hope you can, because I'm going to ensure that we can do that at least to the end of this class. That's the goal. So quickly, before we start today, let me just ask one more time. From the last class we had last week, is there any person that is still having an issue with certain things? Let me just try and give a brief recap. At least we still have some couple of time before we start doing some serious work. I mean, wait, I'm looking for somebody. James, Ayobami, Cyril. Is anybody else having maybe any issue, or I still don't understand certain things, or it does not work for me? I tried it, I don't understand. Anybody at all? Just let me know right now before we start something serious. Fatima. All right, so I'm going to assume that we are all good and we are perfectly understanding what has been taught so far. Can I assume that?
Yeah, for me it's a yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. So that makes my work easy. Please, if you don't understand anything, just let me know. I don't want my work to be that easy. All right, so for today's class, we'll be delving into certain areas. Let's take a look at our outline and see what our outline gives to us. So initially, we're looking at talking about styles in web pages. Then we're looking at inline, internal, and external. So these are ways in which to try to set up our CSS. So I'm going to start up something basic, give you a little bit of structure, very, very quick, so we can start designing some components. I have some cool designs there that I want us to play with in this class right now. I'm going to share the link to everybody, so everybody can just take a look at it on their browser in a bit. But before I go to that point, I want to just explain how to put in the CSS, how to work around with it, so we get the hang of it. So initially, I'm assuming that everybody has three, just like this on their system, on their VS Code rather, because me myself, I've been maintaining my own week 1 and week 2. You can see I have week 2 already, even though I was not in class, but I was following. I have week 2. So I also believe that everybody should be following just like this. And I want to see week 3 in your class, in your VS Code. I think I would have to call on somebody to just share their screen. Let me confirm. But I'm guessing who will I call? Let me call on Eddie. That's if you're going to answer me now. Eddie, what's up? How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I'm having challenges with my laptop, so I'm joining via mobile. So I'm paying attention in terms of what's happening.
All right. Just try
Yeah,
and follow up because it's going to be kind of tricky from here, but ask your questions
yeah,
as much as you can.
yeah. I'm paying attention while I'm sorting out the computer. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So Dave, how is it end?
Yes, sir. I'm fully ready. I'm fully ready, sir.
All right. Do you have Victory set up for today's class?
Sorry, the what?
Do you have Victory set up for today's class? Like, do we have it here?
Yes, sir. Fully
All
ready,
right.
sir.
Perfect, perfect.
Thank you. Yes,
All
yes,
right.
sir.
So
Thank
let
you,
me
sir.
hear from Gifts.
Yes, sir.
Gifts. How's the setup like? Hello, Gifts, are you there? All right, Gloria, how's the setup like? Nobody's answering again.
Sorry, I'm not currently using a laptop right now.
Okay, how do you practice? How have you been practicing so far? Hello, Gloria, how have you been practicing so far?
In Django, I guess.
Okay. All right, Gibbs, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
All right, no problem. All right, let's get to what we need to do today. All right, so for today's class, I believe we have our theory set up to have what we're looking at here. So don't mind all this, whatever that is doing for me, just suggestions. So basically, I'm going to start today's class by just dropping a simple button. Like I believe we've done this button before, so we're going to just discuss how to work with this button. So I also add a setting. We talked about H1 tag like multiple times in the class since day 1. So I'll just drop an H1 just like this. You can follow me or you can just listen to what I'm doing. Either way is fine. So on the H1 tag, I'll just put a text called get started on my H1 tag. Then on the button, no, I'll put get started on the button instead because it's an action. So I'll leave it to the get started. Then on the H1, I'll put maybe welcome to Techhaven. Yep. Am I spelling it right? So just this small letter H. So I'll be doing welcome to Techhaven on my H1. And looking at it, I think I need to add a P tag somewhere at the bottom. Let me give a space. So I'll just put a P tag, then let me allow it to give me suggestions of text. Yeah, give me suggestion of text. So just none of these things. So it says Techhaven information, blah, 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 blah. I think you want to go at this from Google or some sorts. So I have an H1 tag, I have a P tags, and I have a button tags. So if I should go to my sidebar, then open this index.html on a live server, like the way I told you the first week. So it's trying to open up on a live server right now. So I don't want it to open here. So I just copy my link. I'm maintaining this for my outline. So I'll go to my browser here, paste the link here. So when I paste the link here, I can see that I have welcome to Techhaven, the paragraph text I added, and the button. Currently, everything is showing like the way that's supposed to show. But the only issue there is that it is not showing as fine as it's supposed to show. That's the only problem. But it is showing as it's supposed to show. So what do we do here to make it fine? So we talked about three ways in which we introduce styles into our code. The first way is inline. That one is done in, it's not done as much as the others. It's just when I want to just make certain quick fixes, then I introduce an inline style to it. That's just it. Then we have a second one, which is the inline, sorry, the internals. The internal is not done again quite often because it makes so much code to appear in one place, and it is not advisable on a large scale. But the third one, which is the one that everybody adopts, is very scalable and advised to be done, is the external. I'm going to make use of the theory real quick to do the same thing. So first of all, let's just take a look at using the inline. We won't do so much with it because it's kind of like not too necessary at this point. So for us to style an internal HTML tags, we just use the attribute called style. So this is it, to add attribute called style. So you can see it's telling me that it's showing one funny warning sign here, but we ignore that. So we'll copy this style attribute and paste it in paragraph as well. And we'll paste it in button too as well. So this style here is giving us the possibility to style these elements inline, not internal, inline, because they're in line of this, they're in the line of this H1. So that's why I'll call it inline. So for me now, for example, I want to say, okay, when I viewed this particular design, my H1 was quite big because an H1, obviously, my paragraph was not as big as the H1, was not having any color, and my button is looking very flat. So what do? Let me apply some styles to it to make it come alive. So I go to my H1, I do something, let's say I have, let's say I want to change the color. So let's say I'm doing color. I'm changing the color to, I don't want to use black because it's already black. Let's say I'm using brown, something like this. So if I change it to color of brown and I go back to my web page, I can see that my text color has changed to brown. You understand? Because it's an inline styles. If I go back and say, okay, aside adding brown, I want to make the font weight to be bold. So I come here and I do a font weight. I think all these suggestions should be on your system right now because I think it comes with new VS Code. It comes with Copilot. So I think all these suggestions should be on your system, even without you doing anything about it. But if you can't figure it out and it's not showing, just let me know. Let me see if we can figure it together. So I can go to font weight and just do a 700. Then go back to my VS Code. It's a little bit bolder than it was before. If I come here again and I do let's say I want to increase the size of the font. So I do a font size this time around, and I just make it to be something very, very large. Let's say a 60 pixels. Then I take a look at it. You can see it's very, very big. So these are the ways in which we can apply inline styles to our HTML, just like this. So I don't think font size of 60 pixels is nice enough. Let's remove it. The color is okay. We can manage it. We can also manage the font weight. Let's leave it as such. Then what do we want to change again on the particular flow? We have our colors changed. So this is inline. I don't want to do so much. Let me just talk about the inline styles. So we'll come here today for paragraph. I will do something similar. Let's say we'll do color. We'll give it a, let me look for one green. Let me just use green for the purpose of this class. So we're doing these colors. It's called chars, trees, something like that. So we're adding the color to this paragraph text. Nah, it's not fine. It's not readable. Let's do a blue instead. So I think blue is better. So we have blue style there. We can also find it. The font is looking small. Let's make it big. We'll go to font size. We'll take something about 32 pixels, which is a little bit bigger. Yeah, I think this is too big. Let's make it 28. I want it to be there, but not this big. Let's leave it like this. We're just talking about inline. So the last thing we need to do to give a little bit of uplift to our button. So what do we do in our button? We tend to maybe play around with, let's say we want to play around the height and width, for example. So let's say we make the height to be something around, let's just say 200 pixels. I'm wondering how long that would be. Not that long, still okay. So we'll play with the height so as well, something around, let's say 50 pixels. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, I think it's big enough. So let's add some funny, let us make it look fine a bit. So add some border across it. Then we'll just do some border of, let's say border width. We'll do 1 pixels for border width. Then we'll do border color. Border color we'll do, let's just say we'll do a red, because red is something that we can see. Then for border style, we'll do a solid. I'll explain all this one deeply. I'm just trying to explain what inline looks like. So this is what our small styling has done. And you can see there's a background at the back. We can even remove the background by adding another style to it and say, okay, let's start the background color. Let's make it, let's say there's no color. We'll call transparency on it. That means there's no color on it. So let's see. So it's kind of appearing white. If you are not convinced that that's white enough, let's just move it transparent. Let's make it something around aqua. Aqua is kind of bluish. So this is how we style our CSS inline into our HTML. But like I said, it is not advisable because if you have a long code base, you'll be having so many styles inside just one particular element, and it's not easily maintainable. So the second way we're looking at is styling it internally. And for us to style that internally, we need to make use of a style tag. A style tag just at the top between our head and between our body. So we'll just place this style tag there between the head and the body. I think initially it was being placed somewhere, I think in the head, but I think that kind of just evolved to be placed at this area here between the head, closing head, and the opening body. So these are you place your style tags. So I don't know if I think I've talked too much for this kind of 3 minutes. Let me even get an understanding of where we are. Did I speak too much? Am I clear enough? Did I make some sense? Or I didn't make so much sense?
Yes, yes, sir. It's very clear enough, sir, from my end.
All right, thank you very much. So only I know you're not feeling so fine, but I guess you're still trying to follow. Does it make sense for you?
Yes, if it does. It does make sense.
All right, thank you. Semintayo, are you there?
Yes, it's fine. Following.
All right. Hope it's making sense for you so far.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to break down all these attributes and probably send to guys like a kind of guide or notes to all those many styles just for you to possibly go through it and understand it. But we're still coming to play with some of our components that are prepared for us today. So before we do that, let's just talk about internal stylings quickly. So how do we style internal elements? Remember on our let me go to the slide. On our slide, we talked about syntaxes. We've talked about inline already. Before we talk about internals, let's talk about selectors. So in type of selectors, we have the element selector, the class selector, and the ID selectors. So that's what we talked about. And each of the selectors have properties and also have values. I'm going to explain these syntax and types now. So let's go back to our internal styles over here. So before we can apply an internal style, we need to know where are we applying the style to. We talk about three types. We talk about the elements, the class, and the IDs. Now we're asking ourselves a question now. We want to apply a style. Where are we applying the style to? Are we applying to an element, which is a tag? That's what it means. Are we applying to an element or tag? Are we applying it to a class, or are we applying it to an ID? So let's start with an element or a tag. So if I want to style, let's say for example, an H1 tag, how do I do that? I simply come here and say H1, then I open my curly braces, just like this. H1, I open and close my curly braces. Then it's easy from there. I can inside the opening, inside this curly braces over here, I'll come here and I'll say color. Just like the way I styled this here. This color, like we talked about here, is the property. The value of the color that I'm going to set as brown right now is the values. So we talked about the selector, which can be element, class, or ID. Then within the selector, you have a property and a value. I'll show you again. So we have the elements, which is here, H1, like we're targeting this H1 right here, H1. Then we have the property, and we'll give it a value of brown. Just in case you might think maybe it's this one that is showing, we can come here and just remove this internal style that we've done. Take it out. Then before we show our style, let's comment it out so that we can confirm that that's what we're seeing. Let's go back to our browser and confirm. So on our browser, you can see that the H1 has gone back to the previous way it was before, black and just simple. So now let's trigger our H1 tag. Let's open it up. Let's add our font weight that was there before, which was 700. So font weight, and we're doing a 700 on it. So let's check back and see if what we targeted is changing. Good. You can see it changed to what we did on inline. So these are ways in which we can do it. You can do that too for others as well. How do we do that the same way? We'll come here and select a P tag as well. And we say, okay, now P tag, we're trying to add a color to it. You can just copy this guy, go back here, paste it, copy the font size, come up here again, paste it, then remove it from the inline styles. Let's check it back and see. We see that nothing has changed. Before we check back, I need to just comment it out quickly. Let it reload. It has gone back to the way it was. I bring back my P tags, and you can see it's back. So the last one we need to take a look at in terms of element styling is the button. So I'll come here as well. I'll just put a button tag or button elements. I have so many styles here. I cannot be copying one at a time, so I'll just copy everything. So copy the whole thing, then go back here and paste it. Then I can remove the style here. Then I go back, nothing changed. So confirm, I changed this guy from aqua to, let's say, yellow. Yellow is fine. Voila, see is there. So with this setup, you can notice that there's one certain change in terms of how it was looking when it was inline, and how it's now looking right now when it has gone to internal. I don't know, can anybody help me with the looks? Like, how do you think it's looking now compared to the internal, sorry, compared to the inline styles? How do you think it's looking right now?
It's quite
Somebody
better.
better in terms of which, like, what exactly? I want to hear one word. There's one word for it.
Yes, yes,
Can
it
you please
looks more
show it? So
organized.
it's not showing again.
Okay, this is it. Somebody said organized. I think that's a good word. It's looking organized, and it's also looking clear and simple. Somebody can take a look at your code, just your HTML right now, and see that, okay, you make use of an H1, a P tag, and a button. It's clear. Unlike you carrying so much styles and put it inside the H1, put some other group of styles in paragraph tag, it is harder to read. A machine can read it, but a human cannot easily read it. You understand? Because everything is bundled in so one place. But with the help of moving it out to an internal styles, we've been able to fix the issue whereby our HTML setup is looking clean. That's the perfect word, clean. You understand? But looking at the full code base generally here, you can see that even though we've achieved some level of clean structure, I don't make this small. I want to explain something here. Even though we made this clean in terms of our HTML structure, the more we keep on adding, let's say another paragraph tag, another P tag, another whatever tag, what happens here is that our internal styles here will become too long. That still keeps us having so many code base in one particular file, and that kills the purpose of an internal style. I don't know if it makes sense right now. You understand? So instead of having it inline, which was very ugly, we removed it and placed it internally at the top here. Now, in the long run, this internal style we placed here is going to be long, having so many things that makes it to be longer. So what do we do now is that we need to now find a way to move these styles from our internal setup to an external setup, such that if you are working on HTML, we are focusing on HTML file. If you are working on styles, we are focused on a CSS file. Everything has that area of specialization. We call it SOC, separation of concern, whereby an HTML file manages my HTML code and a CSS file manages my CSS stylings. So that's what we call an SOC, basically. So before we break down this whole internal style into an external style, let's talk about the second thing on our list here, which is the class selector. Then we also add an ID selector to it as well quickly. So, but you may ask, why do we need to add a class? Why do we need to add an ID? Can I just select the tag and add it? Yeah, fine. But there's a catch. What if I have two H1 and I'm calling the other one, welcome to Sunday service. Let's do like this. Now I'm having two H1, and the element that I used in tagging this particular style was the H1 tag. Let's take a look at it to be like, you're going to see welcome to Techhaven red, welcome to Sunday service red, the same way. So, but I want one to maybe green to be green and be smaller or be bigger or whatever, to just have different styling than the other. How do I do that? Now comes a class. So what do I do is that I come here and I give this first one a class name. So the class name in this case is like a unique identifier for me to identify that particular element that I want to target, because that element can appear multiple times as the same H1 or paragraph or button or whatever. But for me to be able to identify that individual one specifically, I'll give it a class identifier. So I'll give it a class of, let's say, primary title. It can be anything at all. It can even be your name, anything at all. It can be long like a sentence, but just make sure that it is descriptive enough. Don't come here and do class and just put class of A. It will work, but it does not make sense. You understand? Or just do class ABC because we're trying to be fast. We don't want to waste too much time. You can still come here and it will work definitely, but it is not descriptive. You understand? So just ensure that whatever you type, you are always descriptive. And based off on convention, it is best practice that whenever you're writing a class, you separate your words via a dash. So you won't see me writing a class name like this, where I'll just say primary title together, since I know very well that there are two different words. I would have to separate it, such that if you come to your code base tomorrow, or somebody is reading your code tomorrow, they can easily read primary title because it's having a dash, than having to start to figure out what you are writing when you combine both primary and title together. So that's why it makes more sense to use a dash for it. You understand? And I won't write it like this either, where I will now make use of a camel case. This is a camel case where the second word first letter is an uppercase. We call it a camel case. So I won't write it like this either, because I have special cases. There are special cases in which you write certain things like this. I'll come to that point. But let me just leave that one and focus on the class. So this is how I write my class setup. Now, how do I now style the class to make sure that this particular primary title is different from this second one? Now, what if I come here and give this other one his own class name as well? I say, okay, fine, no problem. I call here secondary title. Very correct and simple. So let me replace it back to a small letter T. Let me make it bigger. I guess it's big enough. Close this. Okay, so I have primary title and I have secondary title, as you can see. Now I want to style both of them. If I check back to my code base, me having this class does not mean that everything is all right. If I go back to my browser, I will just see that I'm having the same reds and everything is the same thing, because I'm still targeting H1 and H1 belongs to the both of them. That hasn't changed. So now how do I now make that separation of concern to be there? Watch this. I can come down here and do primary title, open my curly braces just like the others. I can say, okay, I want this one to be, let's give it one color, Cora. I think Cora should be sharp. So let's give it a Cora as a color. Then we'll do for secondary title as well. And say secondary title, I want my secondary title to be something around, let's just say green. I think I like the solution he gave me there. So let's just say green. So what happens if you go back to our code base? If we remove this one now, let's say we'll comment it out and we'll go back to the code base. You will see that I'm not having the same H1 elements, but I'm having different colors for both of them, because I'm no longer targeting the element that is common to both of them. I'm now targeting the class that is not common to the both of them. I don't know if that is clear. Is it clear? Hi, Obama, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, how clear what is the class selector that I just explained right now?
I'm still trying to absorb it and
Okay. All right, no problem. I think I will do a little bit of recap, like very quick, just to show in some level of clarity once more. But before then, I think I just saw Messi. I didn't see her before on the call. Messi, how are you doing? Oh, Messi is not there.
Good
Okay.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm fine, sir.
How are the class so far? Did you understand the class concept that we just talked about?
Yes, I just joined the class, so
Yeah,
I could just
exactly.
see.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
please get the setup ready. Try and follow us and see if you can understand. I'll recap quickly. Fatima,
Alright.
how's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. Thank you.
Okay, do you understand the class concept?
Yes, I do.
All right. Eddie, Let me see if you are following with what just watching. How is it like?
Yeah, I'm following. I'm following.
Making sense?
Making sense. Very
All
clear.
right, thanks. All right, for the purpose of those persons that can't really reach out to know how they're doing, I'll do a recap of the class TDD. So, should I do a recap or I just talk about another class? Let me just do a little bit of recap. So, what we talked about initially was the fact that initially we're not having class to this H1. It was just basically an H1 tags. And also, we're not having all these styles there. We're just left with an H1 tag. So the issue here is the fact that since we are targeting the H1 tag, like we talked about, there are several ways in which you can target elements. You can target elements based on its elements, which is the tags that we talked about 2 weeks ago so far. You can target them based on a class and also based on an ID as well. So we were targeting it based off of its elements, which is also another word for a tag. And the issue there is the fact that if I have multiple tags of the same name, there will be a problem because I cannot apply distinct styling to individual elements because they have the same name. That is the problem we encountered when we looked at our code base, our browser, and we are seeing that we're having the same look for these two words because these two words are grouped in an H1 tag or an H1 element. So there's a problem, you understand? So now, how do we now resolve that problem? The simplest issue is to uniquely identify that particular element with a class such that I can style that class differently than the other class. You understand? There was something that was common between these two, which was the H1. So we need to give it another element or another design or another attribute, whatever you call it, that is making it different from each other. That is what the class does in this case. So I'll come here and just say class again, like the way I did initially. And the class name we gave it was primary title. And I was explaining that this primary title is like this because we write it like this so that it can easily be read by a human being. Because the computer can read it easily, doesn't have a problem with that. But a human being might not have that patience to be looking at it to try to figure out where there was a break. Assuming we have a long word like primary title text or something like that. Now I'm trying to figure out, I'm reading it and I'm looking at, okay, where am I breaking this word? It is not easy for me to break it in my head. But imagine somebody that was putting this particular project started adding dash like this. Me looking at it like this, I can easily tell that it is primary title text. Fast. You understand? So that is why conventionally we do classes by just putting a dash with it. So I'll come here and just copy this and paste it into my H1, then change this to a secondary. Yep. Such that we can style it differently right now. So I'll come to my code base and just uncomment back what I have here. Then I take a look at my browser and I see that everything is looking fine. I have this in a different color. I have this in a different color. And color is not just what I'm limited to. I can also decide to change the font size of one, and I can leave the font size of the other one and nothing will happen. So let's say I'm turning this one. So let's say 50 pixels will be something big and obvious. And on the second one, I'm leaving it the way it is. So let's take a look at it to be like, good. You can see the primary one is looking way bigger than secondary tag. So this is what a class selector can do for you. Now let me give you another twist of this story. Just watch. If I come here now and I take my H1, let's say cut it. I paste it below the secondary title, below both primary and secondary title, and I paste it here. What do you think would happen? And then so here, I don't want to go back to the browser and you see first. But let me ask a question. Somebody should help me out. I'm not seeing your names though, but let me see somebody can explain. What do you think will happen? I need answers. Somebody. What do you think could happen? Somebody to try. Gifts, Fatima, Temitayo.
Okay, can I try?
Yeah, try. It's a free word.
All right. So the H1 style, the one that is at the bottom, would apply to every other H1. Like it's going to make the primary title, secondary title, it's going to override them. Let me just put it that way. Like that's this H1 is going to take preeminence of every other style that is before the H1.
All right. Let's see. Are you sure we're correct? Let's ask another person to be sure. Who do we ask? Let's ask Eddie. You are following, I guess. What do you think will happen?
Yeah, I think I do agree because I think it will now change into following the format of the secondary title and also aligned with the colors as well that are for the secondary title.
Okay, so that means you don't agree with sorry, who spoke last? That means I don't want to miss your name. I can't get your voice in particular.
Yeah, who's speaking now? It's me, Eddie.
Yeah, I know it's Eddie. Before Eddie, who spoke last? I don't want to guess your voice wrongly. I didn't check your name. Do you agree with
Okay,
her?
it was me.
Okay, what's the name? Sorry, I'm not looking at the screen to see your name.
It's
Yeah,
Fatima.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fatima. I have to put the voice in my head. All right. So do you agree with Fatima or not? Eddie.
Oh, sorry, I'd muted. I differ with Fatima in that I'm saying that basically I'm differing with what she said.
All right. So now we have to, I think I'm not gonna share my screen. Am I sharing my screen?
No.
No.
Yeah, perfect. Let me go to the code now. All right, I can see your names now. Let me ask my question. So Ayobami, do you agree with Fatima or do you agree with Eddie? Wonderful. Now John is available right now. I just saw John. So do you agree with Fatima, Ayobami, or do you agree with Eddie?
I think I agree with Fatima.
Okay. All right. So let me not waste much time. Let's see who wins the whole debate. Let me share my screen one more time. Let's see if Fatima is right or if Eddie is right. So what happens? So what happens? Nothing happens. What are we agreeing with here? Fatima, I didn't override it. Eddie, it didn't take the color. What happened?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what happened.
Fatima, I want to hear from you. What happened?
Yeah, even me, I don't know what happened. I'm still trying to figure out.
Okay. Nobody can figure it out. You can explain, like, what happened? Does this supposed to have override the whole idea or not? What happened? Nobody. Everybody is like, what's going on here? All right, no problem. Okay, so I think what happened basically is the fact that the class selector is taking precedence over the elements here. So even though the element is selected or is kind of selected the second time below it, the class selector takes precedence, except maybe something is going wrong somewhere that I cannot figure out. But it seems the class element is taking precedence. For us to confirm what's happening, I think we can do something different over here. Let's say we add another class to it. Let's say we add something like override. I don't want to use override because my confuse it and saying because I add override, that's why it happened. So let's add something like helper text. So we'll add this helper text on both. By the way, you can add multiple classes. You don't need to add only one. You can add multiple classes. You can add multiple classes, my food, child, multiple classes. You can keep on adding it. Doesn't end. So that's the another advantage of class selectors as well. So you can have that advantage of doing that. So let's add this helper text and come down here. So we're going to do an helper text and see how we can change this color to, let's force it to go or black and let's see what happens. Let's see if it will override it. Normally they override it before Shabo. These days, we wake up today and see that they've changed so many things. So let's just see what happens. Let's override it to black. Good. So like I said, the class selector is taking precedence over the element tags in this sort of styles. So even though I have the H1 tag placed beneath primary and secondary, on a normal day before, it normally would override it. Like I said, you wake up tomorrow morning and something has changed. That's why you need to always test your code base, like just keep on testing. So right now we need to, if you have a class, the class can override any previous classes, but the H1 tag cannot do so much. It's kind of limited to what it can do right now. So because we've override our H1 tag, we don't actually need it anymore. We can remove it and we can remove our helper text. This helper text was just done to clarify the idea of the overrides that we're talking about. So we can add another class to our class selectors. We can use that one to override any previous selection. And I can even force all the font sizes to as well to become something small. Let's just say 16 pixels, for example. And you can see, so this helper text is like another class selector that I added on this line as well. It's overriding everything, but I don't want to override it, so I take it out. That was just a little bit of sample to just explain the idea of element selectors and class selector. So we've explained class selector. I guess we understand what class selector can do, how we can use multiple class selector on a certain elements. They're not only limited to one. You can add multiple selectors as much as you like. You can repeat class selectors as well. Just like the way I added helper at the top, I also added helper at the bottom. So you can repeat class selector too as well. That one is not a problem. You are very, very free with class. Now, the third one, which is very, very construed in terms of how you make use of it, is the ID. The ID is not totally just open to everybody to abuse. You understand? Like me, for example, I use it most of the time when I'm trying to target elements from a JavaScript file. So that's where I make use of my ID. Or certain scenarios whereby I'm trying to just play around with certain things, just like that. Then I used the ID. The ID is so unique that you cannot have multiple ID in a page. I'll give an instance. Let's say I'm placing an ID on the P tag and I call it ID of, let me just say, description text. And also, conventionally, people do their own differently, but conventionally for me, and also for many other persons that are using this setup as well, when you're writing a class style, a class selector, you use a dash to separate two words. But when you are doing an ID, you use a camel case. You don't use description text or small letters. It is not very readable. You use a camel case. This is preferable and it's also very readable as well. You understand? So what happens is that this, in a very short context, me looking at this code, I can tell that the ones you have dashes attached to them are class selectors, while the one that you don't have dashes and you have the camel case is an ID selector. So it helps me to understand how you structured your code in a very, very fast or very, very short window where I have to just take a look at it very quickly. So that is why, based on convention, you name your class selectors with a dash, separated by a dash, while your ID selectors you make it a Pascal, a camel case rather. So how do I now style my ID? Just like the way I was styling my class. And I did mention this. Let me just go back to it. If I'm styling my class, I always add a full stop or a period, whatever you call it, a full stop before the text. While I was doing that on my paragraph, I never added anything. I just called the paragraph elements P or button or H1. You understand? But if I want to style it for a class, I need to add a full stop or a dot before the word. Now, how do I do for an ID? I'll give you the gist. So for an ID, what you need to do is this. Let me comment this paragraph so I'm doing ID selector for it. So what we need to do for an ID is that we need to make use of an hash sign, just like this. You can see I've only just placed this hash, just giving my ID because of auto suggestions and whatever, but I won't type myself. So we can do an hash, then do description text, just like this. So for you to style or select an ID, you need to make use of an hash sign, a hash sign rather. While for you to style a class selector, you need to make use of a full stop or a dot before the word. The same thing too for description text, but I'm going to make use of a pound or hash, whatever they call it, a hash sign before the word. So that is just the exact way. If I come here now, initially we're having, if I go back to the site, to the browser, I return back to its default color because we're no longer targeting the paragraph that we've commented it out, as you can see, but we've added an ID selector, but we've not styled the ID selector. So let's get that styled now. We just copy what we have from the paragraph and we'll paste it on description text. So we'll take a look at it back, it's going to be blue and a little bit bigger. You can see that's how you do ID selectors. But the catch here, like I said, just the way I have this ID here, if I copy this ID right now and I put the ID here, I'm going to get an error when I run the whole thing. I think HTML may give me an error. Let me confirm the error is there. You are on that these days, I started changing so many things in this. You can see. Started changing so many things, but nevertheless, it's not advisable. You can see it is changed to blue and it's still bigger, but it's not advisable. I think JavaScript will show an error for this because it's going to say that it is saying the same ID in two places on the same page. It's going to throw one funny error, but your code base might not break, but it's going to throw an error on the console, I think on JavaScript side. But it's not advisable to have the same ID just like this. You can have the same class, but not the same ID. So on that premise, we take out this ID out of it to go back to the way it was, which is this. So lastly, before we move to our external style, let's style our button. So let's give our button a class. Let's give it an ID because we make it of class so much going forward. Let's go back another ID. Let's call it a button. Let's call it BTN. BTN is short for everybody. It's a simple word, BTN. Sorry that I'm using short word now, but let's call it BTN for now. So we'll say BTN. BTN is an ID, so we have to replace this with something like this. So we'll copy all our text, copy it, paste it here, then we'll comment out this one. Oops, nothing happened. What are we doing wrong? Can somebody help us with what we're doing wrong? Messi. Can somebody help us with what we did wrong? I think we're having something that is not working in our code. Though. James. Cyril. Gifts. Gloria. Temitayo. Can somebody help us with what we're doing wrong? Why is it that our button went back to the default state it was before we started styling it? Look at the code very well and see if you can figure it out.
Okay. I think is with the way we called the ID
Okay, how
in
do you
our style. You've not really changed the .btn.
So
Having
what?
a .btn is mainly when you want to have a class, you want to call a class, then you use .btn. So if you want ID to show that, I think the right what's it called is hash.
Okay, are you sure? I'm thinking may not be correct, so let me ask another person. Siri, what do you think? Do you think Fatima is right, or you have your own context?
Yeah, she is right, because for the class ID is usually a period. Then for the class is a period. Then while the ID is the hashtag. So it should be hash button hash btn.
All right, so let me change this one to a hash and to work a bit.
Yeah, let's check.
All right, let's see. Good, it's work. So initially, I made the mistake intentionally just to see if people are following. And thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Cyril. It clearly means that you guys are following. And I get other people are following so as well. I just didn't ask everybody. So I'm happy that you are understanding. So we are good to go. So the next thing I need to do now is to just take a look, take away all these comments. We don't need too much comments. Just make it clean. So how do we make this particular code base clean? Like we talked about, we need to adopt the external styling. So on our week 3 folder, we just come over here and create a name. You can call it app, you can call it my name, you can call it anything else I want to call it. So by the purpose of this class, we just call it styles. Styles is kind of like more generic to be using. So we'll say styles.css. Then we'll go to our HTML. We'll copy everything that is inside the style block. Aside the style tag itself, we'll just cut it out. Let's cut it out. We'll go back to our CSS. We'll paste it there. So after we've pasted it there, we'll go back to our index.html, remove the style block. If we go back to our code now, we see that everything has gone back to the way it was before. So what happened? Now, there comes the interesting part of linking. Let's go back to our setup here. So we've talked about inline, talked about external. Now we're looking at external. So for external means that you have a separate file that manages your CSS, but you still need to link that external file to the HTML such that the HTML can know what it's looking at to style that page. How do we do that? So to do that, we'll use something we call, I think that should be a link. Let me look at the shortcut for me here. Oops, I think I have to go the long route. So we'll use a link. We'll do an href. Select the styles. So the link is what helps us to link to other external files like the CSS in our project. So we'll just do a link, put up an href, then we'll do because what I did here was just, if I do a full stop means the current working directory that I am. In this case, which is week 3, is my current working directory. And if I do a /, it's going to show me all the files in that current working directory, which is I'm having files like index and style.css. If I want to go back and see, I want to target a particular file in week 1, how do I go back and target week 1? I'll just do a two dots like this, /. You can see I'm seeing week 1, week 2, week 3. I can go into week 1 by selecting week 1 over here, and I can see all the files in week 1, and I can select any one of them. But this doesn't make sense because I cannot link an HTML file in another HTML file. It just doesn't make sense. So I'll go back and just remove everything that I wrote here before, then focus on my style. So I'll do a full stop like the way I talked about before, the /, target my style.css, and I guess Bob's your uncle. So let's see if everything makes sense or if I'm just talking too much. So if we go back to our browser now, you can see that we're supposed to have this setup showing, but unfortunately it's not showing. Why is it not showing? Is link supposed to work? I'm thinking. Been a long time. I normally write all these things internally. The link is supposed to work. So what? Somebody want to say something? You can go ahead. Can go ahead. Okay. Somebody was raising their hands before. Okay, Cyril Geets, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, please, can you go back to your code?
Okay.
Okay, so I think you should type, just delete that at the line 8, delete everything there.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you just type the link, the LI.
Okay.
Then I can see link CSS there.
Okay.
Can you click on that? Let's see.
All right. So basically, something like this would work. So what I was trying to put was a row of style sheets. Let me remove it and see again. Let's add it back. It didn't still work out. Let me remove my parts and see if that's a problem. Or is my code misbehaving? Did it work for you differently? Did it work for you, Cyril? How doesn't it work for me? Possibly. No? Oh, I didn't write the spelling well. Let me see if it will work now. Okay, I think I was getting the spelling wrong. I didn't add an X to my spelling. I did styles and I was doing style.css. Let me just rename it to be style so I don't have that mistake again later. Then style. Let me try the parts I was using and see if it works too. Yeah, it works too. So are we still good? Are you guys following me what I'm looking at here? Cyril?
Yeah, definitely I'm following.
Yeah. Are you currently working on this currently? Is your own working?
Yes, I'm working on. Yeah, it's working.
All right. Who else is working on this as well? Working. Let me see if what you are doing is making sense. If it's working. Fatima, I guess you are working with us.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you see your styles right now from external styles?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Who else is with us that is working live? I think we have, what do we have on the call? Gifts, are you working? Gloria, are you working? Mercy, are you working? Chemitayo, are you working?
Yes, and it's working fine.
Okay. What's happening to Gifts and Gloria, Mercy? Where do you guys go to?
Sorry, I said I'm not currently with my laptop right now.
Okay. I wanted to hear your voice. I just want to know if you're there. All right. What about Mercy and Gifts? Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you people. I'm just trying to cook.
Okay. All right, no problem. No problem at all. So let's just quickly go back to what we are looking at here. That's something that we need to touch base today. So we've been able to successfully move our code base to external styles. Now we've been able to link it to our HTML5. As you can see, we're just consuming about 25 lines of code, which makes our code base so far very, very, very clean. So move on to the next thing. So we're talking about all of this. We talked about colors, fonts, styles, one or the other. When we're styling, we'll come back to it later. No problem to never to waste much time about it. Now with on the box model, we're looking at certain things like spacing, layouts, content padding, margin, whatever. We'll come back to that. Then we talked about layout techniques, position elements, and all the other gibberish here and there. Looking at CSS, layout techniques, display, block. Let's not move too far. Let's come back to box model. We'll just touch on box model quickly. Then we'll move to layout so we can at least play with one thing on our design over here before we possibly call it a day. So quickly, we are making use of this same file that we're looking at here, but looking at the box model. So box model talks about certain things like your margins, your paddings. These are the box models. How do I style my margins? How do I style my paddings? First of all, what is a margin and what is a padding? That is like the first thing you need to ask. So a padding quickly means the spacing around an object. The spacing around an object is referred to as the padding, while the margin is a space between one object and another object. That gives you the margin. Let's take a look at it in action. So let's have, let me just give you a simple context of, I can use this H1 tag. I think it's very fine to make use of it. I don't want to deviate too much. So we'll be putting up our styling on a second slide. Let me just split right. So I have my styling on this side. Just let me know if it's big enough for you to see everything. So we have our styling on this side and we have HTML on this side. So we're trying to work on, I'm trying to show you what a padding does and what a margin does. And I'm making use of this H1, this 2H1 over here. For me to get that done properly, I need to just kind of dump the size and increase it to such that they can both be in the same size. Very necessary for this presentation that I'm about to give. So first of all, I come down here and I put a border. Let's say I say border. Let me do 1 pixel solid red. When I did this before, I did this on button and I made it so I went to the long routes of styling border width of 1 pixel, border color, border style. This is called the shortcut of setting a border. This is the long cut. This will waste like 2 extra lines of code, but this will save you 2 lines of code. So what I did here, I can rewrite it and say, okay, border as a shortcut. I take the 1 pixels first and say 1 pixels. I take the solid, which is the style. I say solid. Then I take the color red. So with these shortcuts, I can afford to remove everything I have here. So I just saved 2 lines of code. So that's the shortcut. I just wanted to throw that in so you can understand the picture here. So now I have color, coral. I have border, 1 pixels, solid red. So I'll add that same border to the second title as well and take a look at it. So I'm having a border, this border and this other border here. Now I don't want to make it to be fully long and get to the edge of the page. How do I fix that? I need to add a width to it. So I'll just do a width and I do a mass consent. Don't worry about this for now. It's just needed for the sake of explanation, but we'll come to it properly. So look at it now. I'm going to have a proper padding covering the title itself, covering the text itself. So now let's add the padding, which is the main content of this our discussion. So padding has long cuts and short cuts, like we talked about border. So the long cut of the padding is me coming and say padding top, and I do let's say 20 pixels. I come here and say padding left, and I do 20 pixels. And I can duplicate it and just come here, I'm doing padding right. Then the last one, padding bottom. I can do this and just go to my code base and see that I now have space between my text. So remember I said that the padding is the space around an object. The object in this case is the text here, which is just a simple text. So this spacing around this text is referred to as the padding. You understand? Let's do the same thing for secondary text. but this time around we'll make it quite bigger. So we'll just target all the 20 and we'll do a 40. Let's go back and see. Good. You can see the text between the space around this particular text now is quite bigger because we gave it a 40, obviously. So definitely tells you that the padding is just the space around the particular object. You can add padding to the paragraph text as well and add padding to the buttons. Very, very easy. So that is just padding. So let's take a look at the shortcuts. There are 2 shortcuts for a padding. Let's take a look at the first shortcut. So the first shortcut is something around this nature. What was a padding? And we'll start padding on the X. We start padding on the Y axis. I'll just put Y axis for context and style on the X axis. I'll explain this and I'll replace the value. So let me comment it out so that it doesn't break the code. So this padding here, this is the first shortcut for a padding. A padding that has 2 values. The first value signifies the Y axis, which is I'm trying to set a padding for the top and the bottom. That's the first value. Second value signifies the X axis, which is I'm trying to set a padding for the left and the right side. You understand? That makes up the Y axis and the X axis for the padding. So let's try it out and see. So instead of having all these 4 lines, I can break it down and make it just the 1 line. Since everything is all 20, I can come here and comment the code, remove the X, the Y axis here, replace it with 20 pixels. The same thing too for the X axis, replace it with 20 pixels. And if I go to my code base, I can remove this one now or just comment it out. Either ways. For my code base now, nothing has changed. Now, what if I want to, let's say, my Y axis, which is the top and bottom, is a little bit bigger than the X axis. Let's say the Y axis up and down is about 40 pixels, but the X axis is 20. So it's easy for me to just come in and just do 40 because it's affecting both up and down and not the X axis. So I look at it and you can see the top and bottom areas are longer than the X axis, which is left and right areas. So that is in a case. So I do these 2 values in a case whereby the 2 values are different. Then I can use X axis or Y axis and X axis value when the 2 values are different. Now, in a case whereby the 2 values are the same, how do I do that? I just remove the other ones and use 1 value. Using 1 value means that all 4 sides are the same thing. You can see. So the stress of writing these 4 lines, I just try to do something small. And it covers the entire space around the text because of just 1 value. Now, that's what instances whereby the 4 values are different, but I want to still maintain 1 line. What do I do? There's a syntax to that, which is I'll start the top first, I'll start the right, I'll start the bottom, and I'll start the left. So this is like the breakdown. I'll start the top, start the right, start the bottom, start the left. So this long 4 lines that I was doing here, I could have easily have done it with 1 line, assuming all the values were different. So let's assume different values. So on the top, we'll do 20 pixels. On the right, we'll do 40 pixels. Let's say this will look funny. So on the bottom, we'll do 60 pixels. On the left, we'll do 80 pixels. We're increasing this by 20 pixels all around. So let's see how that will look like. So you can see there's a top, there's a left, there's a bottom, there's a right. So you can see that the right is quite bigger than this. This is bigger than this. This is bigger than this. So this is just the way which we can apply units across the 4 axes with just 1 single line of code. But enough of the story. We'll just maintain 40. Assume 40 is general guide for everybody. So we're back to base. Now that is padding. We played with padding, quite all right. So what about margins? Like I said, margin is just the space between 1 item or 1 object and another. Very clear. So the space between this welcome to Techhaven and its box, and the space between this Techhaven and its box and the welcome to Sunday service and its box is the margin. How do we set that? If I come to my primary title and I want to set margin works the same way as padding. I can do margin top like I was doing before and take it down to margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right. I can do it the same way. Exactly, it works exactly like padding. So everything I've explained about padding, take it, use this for margin, it works. So I won't bother to come back to that special mention again and just try to explain myself. So I just assume it's clear and I use that padding idea to explain it. So if I want to set a margin, and I say, okay, I want to set the margin from this item here to the bottom, I want to give it a space. I will set a margin bottom of from this particular first box. So this particular first box now, say I want to set a margin bottom. So margin bottom of, let's say, 40 pixels. That means I want the primary tag, the first box, to have a very clear space between the second box. Let's see how it looks. You can see there's a space. Maybe the space is not big enough for you to catch. I'll make it 80. You can see the space gets bigger. You understand? So if I want to, let's say I want to add a space on the secondary title, so but there will be a space at the top level of the secondary title before the primary title at the top. So I'll come here, I'll just, let's say, I'll copy this, comment this one out, go to my secondary title. Let me just replace the padding with one. Since they're all one unit, let me just remove the rest. So I'll come here and I'll paste margin, but I will do a margin top, because if I maintain a margin bottom here and I look at my screen, I will see that there's a space on this side, but I want the space to be at the top instead. So I'll just come here and change this to a margin top, and you can see the space is now at the top level. I can also say, okay, I don't want to do the margin top. I want to do margin 80 pixels everywhere. Let's see how it looks like. You can see intelligent margin on his left, on his right, bottom, top, everywhere. What about if I want to do margin on just the top? Anybody can answer that question, right? Any question? Gloria. Okay.
Jesus Christ. All right, then.
Your mic was on. All right. So let's say I want to apply margin right now on just the up and down. That's top and bottom. So I can make the first one to the 80 like we explained on padding, and I just make this one to the 0. That means I don't want padding on the left and right. And when I view it, you're going to see that it's having margins on just its top and bottom. The S and left and right are zeros, doesn't count. I can also put something like auto here. I've not talked about this, but let's see how auto look like. So auto automatically kind of place it at the center for me. So that's what auto does. It automatically detects the center and place it there. So we can use auto in situations where we're trying to center a box. We can use auto for those areas. There's a common question that has been talked about in terms of the text space. How do you center a div? How do you center a div? So this is the way you can center a div by just using auto for the left and right side, and the particular div will be centered at the middle. But we're not doing centering of div right now, so I'll just take it back to 0. So that is padding and margin in a nutshell. I don't know if that is clear to everybody, or you need a little bit of clearer context or something as such. Just let me know. Let's move on to positioning and flexbox. Yeah, I'm with you. Somebody was trying to talk. Temitayo, are you okay? Are we good?
Yes, we are.
All right. Who else is following again? Let me see. I have who do I have on my list? I have
Following.
I have Dave. Yeah, Eddie, you're following, right? All
Very
right.
clear, very clear.
All right, thanks. What about Dave? Dave, I don't think I've heard from Dave in a while. Dave, how's it going? Okay, James, how's it going on your end?
Yes, sir. Well understood, sir.
All right, thanks. All right, so moving on, we'll be looking at a certain another concept which we call what do they call it again? Where is it? Yeah, positioning elements. Before we come down to Flexbox, we'll leave media queries for next week. We still have one more week for CSS, so let's not combine the whole thing. So we'll just talk about positioning and Flexbox. So positioning, we're looking at 4 main elements, which is static positioning, relative positioning, absolute positioning, and fixed positioning. We can do a little bit of deep dive into block elements, elements, and inline blocks as well. Then we'll just end it today on Flexbox. Then we'll see how we can practice 1 or 2 things before the end of the day. Let's see how I can cover up these 2 concepts. So let's look at positioning quickly. So still maintaining our code base. I don't want to remove all of this that we've done, so let's just keep it ugly for now. So we're looking at positioning. I'm trying to just explain this as fast as possible. So in positioning, we have 4 concepts like we talked about, like I showed you positioning, like I told you on the slide. So we have the first one, which is the static setup. Sorry, I have to write this quickly. Then we have another one, which is relative. Then we have absolute, we have fixed. And comment them out so they don't break anything. So we have static, relative, absolute, and fixed. So the question comes in terms of how do we use these jargons that we're talking about, relative, blah, 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 blah. So static, I won't talk about static now. We'll talk about static some other time because we have to use in the context for it to understand it. We don't have so much context and we don't have so much time to delve out those contexts out. But we'll talk about relative, absolute, and fixed. These 3 can easily be maneuvered currently in our code base. So let me give you a little bit of direct approach. Let's talk about fixed. Let me just add this to my CSS. Look at what we have right now. Everything is structured. Let's make one thing fixed and see how it looks. We'll make the button fixed. We'll say button fixed. Let's see what happens. Button is but now fixed. How this button is misbehaving. Nothing happened to our button. Why? Let's try absolute. Nothing is happening to our button. Button is relative. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens. Let's take it back to our paragraph tag. I want you to say change, then you understand what I'm trying to say instead of just explaining unnecessarily. So we'll go back to, you can see our paragraph is changing. So let's go back to, let's change our paragraph to, let's say we're turning to fixed and see what happens. The same thing. Let's comment it out first. So in order for me to explain what those 3 ideas means, I will first of all need to explain what this particular concept is talking about, display. You understand? Display it's a very, very important piece of concept that we need to understand what display means. Now, there's some elements in HTML, some elements, whatever they call it, that are block elements. While some elements are inline elements and some elements are inline block elements. You understand? You can use your CSS to convert an element that is not a block to a block and also to inline or inline block, whatever case you want to do. Let's say we'll convert this our primary title to an inline element. So we say display, we'll set it as an inline element. So we'll copy this display inline and set it on our secondary title. And we say, okay, we want this primary and secondary to both be inline. You understand? So if we look at our code base, you see that they are both inline. They kind of accommodate the same line. They're no longer block. So initially, they were block elements. That means element that tend to take its own line. That is what the block elements means, or basically means. An element that take its own line and will not share its line with any other elements, except it is forced to do so. In this case, we just use CSS to force the H1 to make it work as an inline element. That is why it is looking exactly like this. If we make it an inline block element, I think it kind of like will make its own decision to kind of adjust itself to be inline and still block in such a way that, like, initially when we had it to be inline, we saw that even the paragraph was dragging space with it because it was inline, but it was not having any block capability. It cannot control its environment. It's just there managing itself inline. Anything can just come on top of it. You understand? But when it is now inline block, it is still inline in the sense that another element can accommodate that empty space if the element is inline so as well. And it also maintains its block capability of having that top area and having the bottom area. You understand? But it cannot have full total control of the line because it is still inline. That's why I'm looking like this. Now, the question is, okay, what if our paragraph is also inline? Let's see what happens. So if we go to our paragraph and place it inline over here, let's see what will happen. I guess the paragraph is too long to even come here and stay. So that's why it is maintaining this line. No problem. Let's remove the block. Let's make it inline and see what will happen to paragraph. Good. You can see paragraph has changed hands. It's no longer having anything block related. It's just going and occupying space. You understand? Because it's just only inline. But if it's block, it's going to still respect its environment and have its shape in a way. So if we do it back to inline block, it's going to have its environment being respected and have its shape, but also maintain an inline feature. The only reason why it's not breaking is because it's the only paragraph text in that place, and this button is a block element. That's why it's not accommodating it and come and drag the space with it. So that's why it's just there. So, but ideally, by default, it's a block element. You can see nothing will happen because the block elements. If I change all these ones back to block, you can see that nothing is going to happen because they are block elements by default. So nothing is going to happen because they are block elements by default. So that's why we cannot convert a block element to a block element already. So they are all block elements by default. So for the sake of positioning now, I need to make this inline. Make this inline. Let me make it flat. I want it to be flat. You can see it's flat. Then I'll go to my button like the way I was doing before. Let me drag this one down here. Then let's make it fixed now and see what happens. So button is still kind of looking like block, like I'm a block-headed button. I cannot be moved. I cannot do anything. No problem. Let's make the button to be inline and see what happens to the button. So the button is still there, still not moving up and down because this our elements, set elements is still block as well. You can see it's still block here. So let's see if we can make it inline and see what happens to our fixed elements inline. Yeah, I got the spelling right. So basically, it just moved the whole thing everywhere. But nevertheless, let me remove it back. Let me take it back to the way it was before. All right, so we're back. Let me just remove all this extra long data. So we're back to the way it was before. So for us to properly style that positioning to see how it looks, let's go to the meets of the class. I think our time is fast going. So let me just say positioning. We'll call it fixed. So the idea of fixed is, let me come back to this explanation and add some little bit of updates so it can work properly. So the idea of a fixed element is that I need that element to be fixed on the screen. That no matter where it is, I need to be fixed at one point so that even if the rest part of the screen is scrolling, that particular element is not going to scroll. You can see as I'm trying to drag this text down, it's kind of like bouncing, but the button is not shaking. I don't know if you can observe that. You can see the button is not shaking. It is fixed to where it is. If I change it back to, let's say, something around relative, and I move, you can see it's moving as the screen is moving. You can see that, right? If I change it back to fixed, it's not moving with the screen. It's fixed in its position. I can also do something extra by setting its position exactly where I want it to be. I can come here and say, I want it to be at the top, 0 pixels. At the bottom, no, let me just say top left. That means somewhere on the top left of the screen, top of 0, left of 0. Let's see where to go to. You can see it just goes to that top and it's fixed there. It's not living there, even though I have, if I come here and I say, okay, let me just increase the content of my paragraph text. Let me just add some lorem ipsum text to it of, let's say, 100. You can see the text is longer now. It's not even scrolling like I want it to scroll. Let me add some more. Let me add another 200. Good. Oops, what happened? At the 200 we added to it. Okay, it has. So with so much text I have on my screen, no matter how I scroll, the fixed positioning remains where it is. I don't know if you get the gist. That is why it is called a fixed positioning. It is fixed to the screen. No matter what happens on the screen, it doesn't get to live there. You understand? Let me show you a simple sample of what I did on this setup over here. This is a kind of site. You can see that this top bar, no matter how I scroll, it's fixed there. It's a fixed position top bar. That's why it doesn't get to move, doesn't get to live there. It's fixed. So that's the idea of that fixed, and that is the use case to fix an element to the top or to fix it anywhere at all of a choice, just to ensure that element does not get to move. I can even come here and say, okay, I want it to be at the right position instead of the left. I can say right of 0 and then go to the other side. I can come here and say, okay, be at the bottom right, and it comes to the down. I can even say, okay, fine, no, we'll start in the middle. I do a 50%. I do 50% of my right to 50%. Let's see what will happen. You say, no matter how I scroll is there because of the position of fixed. So I guess that should be somewhat clear. Let me just comment the fixed out. Then one more thing before we move is absolute positioning. After that, they will move to one bit of work that I want us to do. Then I'll share the Figma file. Then we can start wrapping up for the week. Then hopefully by next week, we focus on design. And that will take us down to JavaScript. So let me just remove all the lorem I've written so far. So we are back to our initial code base, our button looking good, all of our contents looking good. Perfect. So there's another type of block elements and inner elements that you guys did or used as a last week. But let me just still touch base on it one more time. So on that premise, I will have to just reduce the padding that I have for these guys such that they don't occupy so much of my space. I'll make it 10. Then I'll make the margin something small, 20 pixels, so that they don't occupy so much of my space. Beautiful, perfect like this. So I'm going to create a div. I believe we worked with a div as last week. So I'll create a div. So a div is a block element, just like the way I was trying to explain what a block element is for an H1, that doesn't allow any element to share its line. You understand? That's what a block element means. So a div is a block element. We also have another one called a span. A span is an inline element. It's just like saying display inline. That's what a span is. It can accommodate so many items on its line. For example, when I come to this div and I say item 1, and I do another div and I say item 2. Let me not leave it as 2 divs. And I go to span and I say, okay, span 1. Let me say span 1. I think I've gone to do something wrong here. So I say span 1 and I do another one and I say span 2. So you're going to see that the divs is going to occupy one line at a time, but the span is going to be on the same line. Let's see. So this is a div, one line, one line. This is span 1, span 2. You can see the div occupied one line and another line, but the span all appears to be on the same line. So this is a perfect explanation of an inline element and a block element, span and divs. But the main idea we're looking at today is just a span, a single div. So we're using this div now to draw a box. So let's draw a box with the div. So we'll give the name of the div a class selector of box wrap. Let's call it box wrap, just a name, not special. So we'll call it a box wrap. Then we'll go to our button, which is beneath our button. So we can put it somewhere here. We'll put box wrap. Because it's going to be close to our button, we'll add a margin on our button to make it have space down. So we'll do a margin bottom of, let's say, 40%, just to make it have that space that we need. If you go to our browser, nothing is there because the div is empty. So let's tell our div to have some couple of items. So first of all, we'll give our div a width and a height, just like we give it our button. So come here, we'll do width of, we'll need something quite bigger than the button. So we'll go to something of about, let's say, 500 pixels wide. Then on our height level, we'll do something way higher. Let's say we'll do 250. Let's have a rectangle. 250 width, 250 height, 500 width. Let's look at our code. Still nothing, because we've given it a height, but we've not given it an appearance. So for the first appearance, we'll just give it a border. This is the border that we have here. We can copy it and just use it. It doesn't matter. We can still make it show red. Now it's going to have an appearance right now. Let's take a look at how it looks. Good. So we have a square that has 500 widths and about 250 heights. You understand? Now, if we come here and do position, so I'm doing this to explain position just now. So if we come here and do, let's say we don't have a position, let me just put relative here. I'm going to comment it out for now. Then inside this my div elements, I'm going to do another div, another block element inside of it. So I'll say inner box wrap. Let me just call it that. Inner box wrap. So this is a shortcut for VS Code to create a class. Just do a dot, name of the class. It's going to show up a suggestion here. Click on it and you have it. So I'll do an inner box wrap. I'll copy the inner box wrap over here. I'll just paste it. I'm not sure we can do nesting in CSS yet. I don't want to try right now. Time has gone. So I'll just put it outside. Then I'll paste. I'll give it a certain attribute in terms of, let me give it a border, just like we give this first one. So, but we're going to go with this a kind of, let's say green border. So 1 pixel solid green, like we were doing for the red. Then we're going to have a certain width and height. Let me copy everything that is here. I'll make it smaller. Let me say I make it, let's say half of it is fine. So I've been doing 250 on the width and 125 on the height. So this is like half of the box in itself. So this is what I'll be doing. And if I take a look at my code base, what will I be expecting? I will just expect a smaller inner wrapper div inside a bigger div. You understand? Now let's explain relative and absolutes right now. So if I come here and I say, okay, let this inner wrapper has an absolute positioning, what happens is going to kind of still fall within a space here, but it's looking kind of weird. It's supposed to go out of it. But the reason why it's not going out of it is everything here, like we talked about, are already blocked. Everything is just block elements everywhere. Let me quickly do a quick setup and see what happens. Let me comment everything we have, including our button, and see what happens. Then I do another div. Let me kind of duplicate this div here. This one without having an inner wrap, just the box wrap. Let's see. So because this is still an inline element, it's still kind of occupying that same space as well. You have this block, you have this block, it's not going out. So if you have a relative positioning, it's still going to have the same thing, but this is not supposed to be so. Supposed to have come out of this space. So if I have the setup just like this, I have a div block here, another div block here. If I come and put my inner box wrap to be a fixed position, it's going to assume this place it is right now. It's not going to come out. If I come here and I do, let me take it to the top. That's 0 pixels. Automatically, it's going to go to the top one, even to the top of the screen. That's where it's going to go to, top of the screen. If I come here and I make it absolute, like the way it is, if my box wrap, if this my box wrap is not having relative positioning, it's going to be somewhere here. It's kind of fixed in a way, but not fixed on the screen. Let me show you something. If I come here and do it top, like what I'm doing for fixed, and I do it sub 0, it's going to go out of that box. So the area where there's relative positioning. And in this context, that relative is not in anywhere on either of the box because I have removed it from the box. I commented it as from the box, you understand? But if I come here and I add it to the box, it's going to be relative to its parents, which is this inner box. Let me see, somebody has a question. Yeah, Binta.
Yeah, like your screen is static. I can only see the browser. I don't know if it's just me. I'm not
Okay.
seeing when you are navigating to the VS Code.
Let me reshare. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I have the screen now.
Okay, it has not come up yet.
Is anybody in the same situation? Is anybody in the same situation as Binta?
Yeah, it's no longer moving to the
Okay, it's
VS.
coming up. I can't see the screen now, but it's like it's still coming up.
All right, hold on, I'm coming. I
Can
think
you
I need to.
move to the VS Code? Let's see.
Are you seeing VS Code now?
Yeah. We're seeing it now.
Okay. I'm coming. I think I need to switch my channels provider. MCN is kind of shitty here. Trying to explain. Can you see my VS Code and browser like real time? Like I'm switching both of them back and forth. Can you see my movements?
Yes.
All right. So let me just do a recap of what I'm trying to explain. If the only thing I explained today, I think we are good. It's better because we're going to be making use of positioning very, very well as we go. So I commented some part of the code. So what I'm doing is that I'm going to make it very explanatory to have, let's say I have a box wrap 1 and I have box wrap 2. So I'm having 2 boxes. So I'll come here and create another box wrap. So I'll say box wrap 1. Then I'm going to give this one a distinct color just to make it different. So I'm making this one, let's say blue. Then this one will be the same width and height, it doesn't matter. Then this box wrap 2 is going to be a red. Initially, both of them are not having relative positioning, but only one of them has a child, which is the 2. So you're going to have the inner box wrap is the one that has a child. So by default, it's not having positioning 2 as well. So they are just simple divs living their happy lives. Now, looking at what I have here, I'm having the first div is a blue, a second one, which is the red one, and it has a child, the green divs. These are 3 simple divs, just living everyday life. Now, what happens is something comes along the way whereby the inner div is trying to explore. And okay, I want to explore outside of my container. How do I do that? Now, it's going to make sure that its parent is not having relative. If its parent is having relative, it is automatically construed into its parent's container. There's no how it can go out of the parent's container because the parent container is having relative positioning. It is locked in. You understand? But currently, the parent is not having relative, and even the inner div is not having wide eyes to open to go outside because it's not having absolute positioning. So it's just maintaining status quo simply. So if I come here now and now say, okay, this div, let's give it absolute positioning. Let's make it go out. Now, if I go back to my code, you observe that it is still looking as though it's here, but it's not actually here because I've not moved it. That's why it's looking as though it's here. I've not moved it. I just gave it an absolute positioning, but I've not moved it yet. So if I come here and say, okay, let me move it to a sub-0 position, it's going to go out of its parents. Let me add a margin so that we can see the difference between both divs. So we'll do a margin bottom of 20 pixels. So this is one div, this is second div. So let me add a margin sub to as well. So I'll just do the y-axis I talked about, then add 0 on the x-axis so it can be separate on the up and down. So you can see this first div now is having a margin at the top and a margin at the bottom. But this my inner div, which was the child of this red box, has moved out of the parents and has gone to the very top of the screen. If I come here to and say, okay, you can see there's still a little bit of space between this edge, the edge of the screen and the box. If I say, okay, let me force that to go to left of 0, that means go to the far left perfectly. You can see it has touched the far left and the far top of the screen. I can move it out so as well, like I was moving the button. I can move it to the right hand side and it will go to the right hand side. You understand? So because its parent is not having relative, it can move and explore everywhere it can explore. But immediately its parents have relative, it's back to the house. It cannot live again. How yet it will be moving within his house, like going here, going here, going here, going here, but it cannot go out of the box again because its parents is now having a relative positioning. It locks it in. So this is basically the idea of relative position, absolute, fixed. But here's the kicker. Despite its parents having relative positioning, if I decide to give it fixed instead of absolute, it breaks protocol again and moves out. Let's see. I come here and I give it fixed. It goes out again. You understand? So this concept is kind of tricky in the sense that you are thinking, okay, when do I use a relative? When do I use absolute? When do I use fixed? You understand? I can't explain all the use cases for you. That's why I prepare some designs that we can play with to actually use fixed use absolutes, use relative, or whatever the case may be. But in a bare minimum, this is what it does. Relative of a parent keeps a child locked in, regardless of if the child is absolute or whatever. But if the child is fixed, like what we have here, when the child is fixed, it, despite the fact that the parent is relative, it can still go out of the parents. But if it assumes a position of absolute, like we have here, and the parent is relative, it locks it inside the box. But if the parent is not having relative, it goes out again. Likewise, the same way to go out, even if I change it to fixed, to still go out again. So fixed has higher strengths than the four of them. It can move, regardless of what you did to his parents, it can move out, doesn't care. Fixed have higher strengths. But absolute does not, it has almost the same strength as fixed, but it can also be constrained if his parents has relative. Then it can be constrained. But if his parents does not have relative, it works almost similarly as a fixed positioning. But relative is just to guide the absolutes and create structure. Does not do so much. You understand? That's what the fixed, the relative just do in this certain situation. So because of our time is running out, we'll just have 1 minute to wrap up. I can't touch on Flexbox. We'll talk on Flexbox possibly sometime next week. Let me just go through this screen. These are the screens that I wanted to take a look at, but because of time, we're able to take a look at this screen. So this is just a simple login screen. Hopefully by next week, Emmanuel can help us take a look at some couple of design structures on these screens. Then we have this is the landing hero section that I wanted us to work with. So we'll just play around it. This is another one. This is another one. This is our other section as well. Just a couple of blocks that I just extracted out for certain places where we can play with and use what we learned. So you can see that the way we're targeting all these styles here, colors for buttons, all of these. These are things that I wanted us to play with. You can see buttons, where these buttons were styled. We'll play with these things as well. The input field as well, how to style an input field. We can talk about this. These are cards. We'll look at this possibly next time, so we can use to wrap up our CSS situations. Then we have buttons that has icons too as well. So we can use these buttons to wrap up our CSS by next week. So I believe we've been able to cover like a lot of most important tasks for this week. So I will just make this kind of public and drop the link on the group and also on the chat just now. So let me just make it anyone with the link, save it, copy the link, then go to the chats. Do I have it? So you can go through this link. If you are very ambitious and passionate enough, you can try and play with one of the designs. I think that's what we'll start the class with next week. Let me see those people that played with the design to see what you can do. If you can play with it during the week, you can just send it to me, feel free. Let me just review and help you maybe adjust this once in a while. So this is just the link for the Figma design that I've come up with. I'll also maybe share this about think this PowerPoint is necessary. It just highlights nothing much, nothing special. So that is the only thing that I would like to share for this week. Except any other thing that you want me to share, you can let me know too as well. I will paste this on the WhatsApp group after this class. So that is kind of all for the week. I don't know if you have any question, any suggestions, anything on your mind that you want to share. Feel free to let us know. And with that, we'll call it a wrap for the week. Any question? Benita, sorry, Binsa, Eddie, Temitayo. Eddie, I know you were having a couple of you're not practicing, you're trying to follow. In case you have questions, just let me know. Gifts only.
Yep.
Temitayo, yeah. You can speak up.
No, I was agreeing with you. No, today I think it was quite straightforward, and you simplified things, and it was very helpful for one to follow.
All right, thank you. So in the absence of any further questions, hopefully by next week we'll recap and move further from there. So Imole, over to you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Elvis. And thank you everyone once again for making time for this. One thing that is very common when it comes to technical classes like this is that over time you see people drop off. But if there's anything that has been common in this class in the last 3 weeks is that our tutors, facilitators have been doing justice to every of the topics and breaking it down in a way that is easy to do. So please, let's hold ourselves accountable that we all are going to be here till the end of this mentorship program, and that every single week we will do our best to be here. As usual, the recording of the video of the class is going to be available and it's going to be shared with us. Please make use of that WhatsApp group, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it there. Also, just like you said, show how ambitious you are. Take on some of these assignments and take it forward as well. So yeah, let's have a lovely week, and it's a pleasure having you all here today, as always, and of course looking forward to next week. Yes, bye.
All right, thank you guys. Bye.